Okay, good Vach, Freiliche Vach. It's a Vach, it's a Freiliche Vach, but it's also connected to the Yom Tov of Purim still. In Yerushalayim, they're still celebrating Purim. It's a triple Purim. Some of the mitzvahs done on Friday, some mitzvahs done today, and some mitzvahs done tomorrow. And the Rebbe once said that since Yerushalayim is the place of every single Jew is connected to Yerushalayim. Therefore, it's also good for us outside of Yerushalayim to also connect with the Jews in Yerushalayim and continue the celebration of Purim by giving Shalach Manas to Savyenim on Sunday. Even though it's not the mitzvah, it's not the custom, but it's a good way to connect and draw down the joy of Purim and connect with the Jewish people in Yerushalayim. So, one of the highlights of Purim that distinguishes Purim beyond all their holidays is Ad Lo Yada. The joy of Purim is meant to be beyond knowledge, beyond rational thinking. The Talmud says you're supposed to celebrate on Purim until you don't know that blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. The simple translation is you're supposed to be so drunk till you can't tell the difference between blessed as Mordechai and cursed as Haman. But as Chassidus explains, it doesn't mean that you should think that Mordechai is Haman. What will be the point of that? Deeper meaning of this is that not only should our mind say and our heart say that blessed is Mordechai, but it should be something that comes from the deepest core of our soul, beyond our logic and reason. That in the deepest recesses of our soul, beyond our logic, beyond our understanding, a Jew senses that blessed is Mordechai. A Jew is drawn to Hashem and Torah mitzvahs with Mesiras Nefesh, with sacrifice. So it's not just that we know logically that blessed is Mordechai, not just we know logically that cursed is Haman, that Torah mitzvahs is what we should subscribe to and that we should reject things that tear us away from Hashem, but it's something that's so deep in our souls that it's beyond logic and reason. It's infinite. So I want to share with you two stories, one more contemporary than the other, that give us a taste of Ad Lo Yada, going beyond logic and reason. The first story I read in the Sichas HaShavua, excellent publication from Chabad in Israel, and it's about a prominent chassid of the previous Rebbe and our Rebbe, who served as a rabbi in Gruzia, in a city called, I hope I'm pronouncing it somewhat correctly, Tbilisi, in Gruzia, capital of Gruzia. The rabbi's name was Yaakov Dabrashvili. He was the chief rabbi for the Jewish people in Gruzia, and he was arrested. What happened was that someone entered the synagogue, called him outside, and he opened up the buttons of his shirt, and he exposed that he was wearing a police uniform underneath his civilian clothing, and he told him that you're arrested. The KGB didn't want to make a tumult in the city, and therefore they didn't want to arrest him in a regular way. Just casually took him in for questioning through this policeman. This was in 1953, the 28th of Teves, and it was the middle of the period of the doctor's plot, which I shared, I think 2 years ago, the story of the doctor's plot. How there was many doctors accused, Jewish doctors accused of trying to kill Stalin, and there's a whole plan to send all the Jewish people into these labor camps, crazy thing that ended, thankfully, on Purim when Stalin died. And Stalin's death was, as I shared in that story, connected to the story of Purim, where Hashem chose to protect the Jewish people. And as the Rebbe said in the discourse then in 1953, that although there is a logical reason why you could think that Esau and Jacob, Esav and Yaakov are the same, nevertheless, God says, I love Yaakov. And God rescued the Jewish people despite there being ways to think that we're undeserving. And as Rebbe explained that discourse, how um, the um, the gallows that Haman had erected for Mordechai were 50 cubits high, and 50 cubits high represents the a transcendent level of godliness, and by reaching a level beyond the natural order of the Seder Shtalshus of the spiritual cosmos, so then there's no way of saying that we are better because we do these deeds and we're because at that level of infinity, it would seem they're all the same. And therefore, Haman has a chance to be victorious over the Jewish people because why are we better? Because of mitzvahs, because of Torah. At the level of infinity, is everyone the same? So in this discourse that Rebbe gave in 1953 on Purim, Rebbe spoke about how Hashem loves Yaakov, despite there logically being a way to say that we're undeserving, and even going in their own beyond logic, the level of the infinity. So then darkness and light are the same, and therefore there should be no preference to the Jewish people over the anti-Semites. Nevertheless, God says, "I choose Yaakov. I choose to love Yaakov." And at this famous Farbrengen, the Rebbe said to announce, "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah!" And Stalin died at that time. It was very unusual Farbrengen and an unusual godly events that happened in the world that's protected the Jewish people with the death of Stalin. This story began before the death of Stalin, and he was arrested again on the 20th of Tavis in midst of the doctor's blood, in midst of this plan to exile Jewish people to these labor camps, because they're all part of this plan to attack and poison Stalin. So there was the anti-Semitism was fomenting, and people which are ordinarily the government wasn't interested in arresting, they arrested them as well, including this Rabbi Elishvili. What happened was, Rabbi Yaakov Elishvili, why was he arrested? There was a celebration of a circumcision. And at the circumcision, his student, Betzalel Elishvili, shared at the circumcision a funny remark that he had heard from Rabbi Yaakov Elishvili. What was the funny remark? They had just replaced a statue of Lenin with a statue of Stalin. And so Rabbi Yaakov Elishvili said, it says in the Torah, it's better to have a live dog than a dead lion. And therefore, the government is giving preference to Stalin and giving him the statue and taking away the statue of Lenin because it's better a live dog than a dead lion. So because he compared Lenin to a lion and Stalin to a dog, so he was arrested. And when he was arrested, it wasn't just an arrest. He was arrested and he was beaten, and he wasn't given time to sleep. And he woke up in the middle of the night, as was customary, unfortunately, in the KGB circles. So they brought him for a second interrogation on the night of Purim. They arrested him again on 20th of Tavis, and in the night of Purim, they beat him up, and they brought him back to a cell, which he was completely emaciated from the beatings, and he tried to say the story of Esther from memory. And as he's trying to say the story of Esther from memory, the Megillah, he falls asleep. He slept for 15 minutes, and as soon as he falls asleep, they wake him. They say, they're top officers, the KGB, they're waiting for you. How you're sleeping? They screamed at him, and they brought him back into the interrogation room. Again, this is all because, on the surface, he was serving it for decades in this city as a rabbi. But what had irked the ire of the KGB was this remark, this just joke, seeming just remark about Stalin. And anyway, so it's night of Purim. They bring him back into the interrogation room, and for the second interrogation, and there are a group of officers waiting for him. And they're demanding that he admit to all of the accusations, and he's refusing. So he's refusing to admit, and one of the interrogators says to him, "Come here." And he approaches the interrogator. When he comes closer to him, he suddenly feels this tremendous heat. Apparently, there was some kind of fireplace or furnace, I'm not sure what. And because he had come from the cold to the intense heat, he immediately fainted. And when he woke up from his faint, he says, "I want to tell you guys a story." To the surprise of these KGB officers, I want to tell you guys a story. Tells them the following story. And he said that there was once a blood libel where they accused the Jewish people of taking a Christian child and slaughtering him and using his blood for matzahs, as unfortunately this crazy blood libel has happened many, many times in history. And the interrogators took the rabbi, the leader of the community, an older man, and they tortured him and they asked him to admit that he was guilty of arranging the kidnapping of this Christian child. And because the rabbi was old, because the rabbi was sick, he admitted the guilt of doing this. In order they should stop. He just couldn't hold. He couldn't withstand the torture. And Rabbi Yaakov Elishvili said the interrogators hit him like you guys hit me. And as he said those words, as like, you guys hit me, he pulled up his pants, and so that they could see the welts on his skin on his legs. And it was so scary the way his legs looked that the officers couldn't look at him. And he continued his story. He said that the king, after the rabbi admitted the guilt for killing the Christian child, the king made a decree that the Jews should be killed and tortured. But when the interrogator that had hurt the rabbi, that beat up the rabbi, the king had honored him, so to speak, to kill the Jewish people. When he began to carry out the ruling of the king, he suddenly got a heart attack, and when he recovered from the heart attack, he understood that this was God's hand, and then he said, "Let's bring the guy back in for another interrogation." And then the truth came out that this wasn't that the rabbi that of course the rabbi wasn't involved at all in the kidnapping of this Christian child. So the rabbi says this story. Rabbi Elishvili tells this whole story to these KGB officers. So they understood what he was sending to them. So one of them makes a snide remark and says, "So why doesn't your God punish this officer who just hurt you? Why doesn't your God, if you're saying that your God was the one who punished those people for torturing that rabbi, why doesn't your God punish him for hurting you?" So the rabbi said, "I am not worthy of God doing a miracle for me, but I am certain that a day will come and God will take vengeance from that interrogator, what he did to me." The interrogation concluded, and Rabbi Yaakov was brought back to his cell. The next day, he hears again the click of keys on his cell, and he's brought again to interrogation, but this time to a clean, nice room, a warm room, and he's brought to a table, and there's fruit on the table, there's food on the table, and he saw that the interrogators are looking at him with a sense of respect and fear. And he was wondering, what's going on over here? What happened? And he found out that interrogator that had hurt him, his daughter had fallen into hot water and she had died. And her mother was so shocked that she jumped out of the second story and committed suicide. And now this guy had lost his daughter and his wife in the same day. And so on Purim, he was brought back, and these interrogators had a whole different respect for him after this. And he was free that day on Purim. It was discovered again a few days later that day also was that Stalin died, And the Jewish people had, as we recited in the Havdalah tonight, light and joy, gladness and honor. I want to also share with you a more contemporary story that happened to also brings out this idea of serving Hashem beyond logic and reason, beyond limitations, in more of a contemporary way. And how Hashem responds to us. We go beyond ourselves. Rabbi Moshe Feller, Rebbe's emissary in Minnesota, was invited in the summer of 1968 to attend the Bnei B'rith camp in Starley, Pennsylvania. The Bnei B'rith every year selects 40 of its brightest teenagers to go to a training session for Jewish leadership in Starley, Pennsylvania. So they have their main camp, like 150 kids. They also have a special camp of 40 kids for a leadership, the best kids, the smartest kids. And they invited Rabbi Feller, the Rebbe's emissary, to Minnesota to come to Pennsylvania. So he consulted the Rebbe, is this a good idea to go for this 10-day trip and to participate and to teach them Torah? And the Rebbe said it's a very good idea. But his son, Mendel, was also an emissary today in Minnesota. He was only 10 weeks old. So the Rebbe said it wouldn't be appropriate to bring him for this 10-day trip. So he went there to Minnesota, and his wife and son weren't with him, and he stayed these 10 days there, teaching the boys Torah and putting on film with them, davening with them, and really he had a major impact on them. One of the highlights of this trip was a debate that they had between him and the resident scholar. The resident scholar was a very well-known, not only not Orthodox rabbi, but more like an anti-Orthodox rabbi, and the boys were interested to hear the difference between this rabbi and this Hasidic Rabbi Feller. Among other things, they asked them to answer the question, what do you think of when you say Baruch Atah? Blessed are you. What are you thinking? So this rabbi this rabbi was a very confused rabbi. Again, he was against Torah and mitzvahs, against orthodoxy, and he was saying, like, the only reason we need to keep Torah and mitzvahs is just we should have unity. If we all eat the same foods, then we'll all be together. If we all eat gefilte fish and matzah, then we'll all be together. Some weird things like this. But Rabbi Feller's ideas were very simple. You keep Torah and mitzvahs because this is real. We say Baruch Atah, we're talking to Hashem. And the boys it really resonated with him what Rabbi Feller was saying. One question they asked these rabbis, you both agree, the boys asked the rabbis, you both agree that mitzvahs are important. What happens to someone who doesn't do mitzvahs? What happens if you don't do mitzvahs? So the other rabbi, the anti-Orthodox rabbi, he's like, imagine you go to New York and you don't go to Madison Square Garden. You don't go to Times Square. You don't see a Broadway play. You don't see the sights of New York. It's a shame to miss out on these places. That's what the other rabbi said. Rabbi Feller said, being in this world and not doing mitzvahs is like going to New York and not breathing, not eating, not drinking. You're not just missing out on something. You're not living. So the difference between these two rabbis is very clear. And he had really made an impact on them. Now he had arranged with the camp that he was going to go for the night of the 12th of Tammuz, the anniversary of the liberation of the previous Rebbe, to be by the Rebbe for the Rebbe's Fabring. But he thought to himself, why should he leave these boys and go to the Rebbe's Fabringen? Wouldn't the Rebbe want him to stay with the boys and make a Fabringen for them? It's different teaching someone Torah making a Fabringen. Fabringen is much warmer, you have to communicate much more clearer and more, it's different. So he decided, the right thing for him to do is to stay with the boys. And he stayed with them, and he invited the best of the boys to come later at night after the programs that he had to a Fabringen. And they had a beautiful Fabringen. And he could have gone to New York, to the Rebbe, but he stayed. And after the Fabringen, they invited him to come to the main camp on Shabbos, where to the 150 boys, they had like a Shabbos afternoon thing. He was telling them stories about the Baal Shem Tov and the previous Rebbe, and they loved hearing the stories. It was an amazing, amazing experience. Anyways, the 10 days finished, and all the boys really connected with him, really learned a lot from him. And it was time for him to go back. He came to New York. When did he come to New York? He came to New York on the 18th of Tammuz. Now, that year, the 18th of Tammuz was on a Sunday. And the fast was pushed off from Shabbos to Sunday. So he was fasting. He finished his fast in New York. And when he gets to New York, he gets a message from Rabbi Klein. He said, the Rebbe is asking for you. He came to the Rebbe's minyan. The Rebbe was reading the Torah, where the Torah was being read on on um, on Monday. Sorry, yeah, on Monday. The next morning, he went to the Torah reading. Rabbi Klein said, "The Rebbe is asking for you, Rabbi Yitzchak Groner Olav Shalom, Rabbi Shlomo Kunin, to come in for a private audience to the Rebbe in about an hour." Wow, a private audience to the Rebbe? So he went to his father's apartment to get his kapota, his showers kapota, to go into the Rebbe. When he came back to 770, Rebbe Klein's looking for him again. There's a change. You're still going to have your audience at the Rebbe, but there's going to be a special Farbrengen at 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon. Now, the Rebbe, in the history of Chabad, there's never been a Farbrengen on the 18th of Tammuz at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What happened on the 18th of Tammuz? Why would there be a Farbrengen then? And a lot of people weren't in New York because it's the summertime and people go to camp, to Catskills, to vacation places. Very few people were there. And so it was a very special moment with the Rebbe. And he was there with Rabbi Kunin and Rabbi Groner Olav Shalom. And this was, very few people were there, and it was a very special Farbrengen. The Rebbe walked in and explained that today, the 19th of Tammuz, was 75 years since the conclusion of the 7-day celebration of the previous Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah. The previous Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah went on, the celebration of his Bar Mitzvah went on for 7 days. So when the Bar Mitzvah was on the 12th day of Tammuz, 7 days later is the 19th of Tammuz. So the Rebbe said, since this is the anniversary, the previous Rebbe's 7-day celebration conclusion, so we're going to make the Rebbe said a mimer on the words that David told Shlomo Melech, "V'chazakta v'yisal," you should be strong, you should become a man. So after the mimer and the Farbrengen, Rabbi Feller went into the Rebbe's room for a special audience. And this is what the Rebbe said. Du hast sich abgehalten von zu kommen da, Yud Beis Tammuz, hab ich vor dir verendigt der mimer. Because you held yourself back from coming here for Yud Beis Tammuz, I therefore conclude the mimer for you. Is that what's going on? He never told the Rebbe that he decided himself not to go because he felt it was the right things, what the Rebbe wanted him to do. He never told the Rebbe anything. But the Rebbe knew inside of himself, this battle he had in himself, that he was the guy should go with everyone else, be the Rebbe's Farbrengen, what it's like to be the Rebbe's Farbrengen, what a special thing. And instead, he'd be with a bunch of young boys and the Bnei Bris and talk to them about Yud Beis Tammuz. It wasn't that exciting compared to what he wanted to do with it, but he held himself back. And the Rebbe, because he went ad yoda, beyond what he wanted to do, he had a special, and the Rebbe felt it. The Rebbe felt it in him. The Rebbe, with divine inspiration, the Rebbe knew how he held himself back. You held yourself back, therefore the Rebbe said a special mimer for him. And he told the Rebbe about the whole trip, the 10 days, and especially the Rebbe's face was glowing. When he told the Rebbe about the stories he was telling the children, how they enjoyed it, it was a lot of nachas ruach. So bottom line is that Hashem listens to us, Hashem hears us, and we have to go beyond our nature. It says in the Talmud that there were 3 people that did special things, but if they knew Hashem wrote about them in the Torah, they would do it in a whole different way. It says that Reuven went to go save Yosef, and if Reuven would know that Hashem would write in the Torah, he tried to save Yosef, he would have brought Yosef back on his shoulders. It says about Aaron that Moshe thought Aaron would be jealous that he was chosen to be the leader instead of Aaron. But Hashem testified in the Torah about Aaron that Aaron will be happy in his heart. The Torah says if Aaron would know that Hashem writes about it in the Torah, then he would have brought a whole band to celebrate Moshe becoming the leader of the Jewish people. If you know that Hashem writes about him in the Torah, that he did such a special thing, you do so much more. It says about Rus that Boaz went and brought Rus, who's so generous, he gave her so much flour and wheat. If Boaz would know that the Torah compliments him, how much he did for Rus, what Boaz would have done? He wouldn't have just taken her some kernels of wheat. He would have taken her to Shiloh's or to Langandola, right? Anyway, so the Medrash concludes, but who will write for us? And the Medrash says Hashem writes, the Mashiach seals, Hashem does, pay attention to everything that we do, and there's a response from Hashem. So we have to realize, as Maimonides says, the next good thought, next good word, next good action to hit the scale and bring Mashiach. We have to go ad yoda, beyond ourselves, to get it right. L'chaim, l'chaim, a good